Hi there, today I'm going to show you my specs of my computer. In this video, I'm going to show you how to check your computer's specs and the device manager and even potentially the stuff that you have on your computer. So I'm going to show you how to do this. In this video, I'm going to show you the specs of Windows 11, potentially your computer specs. If you go into settings, which you can do it in two ways, you can right click your via using the right clicking feature that your mouse has, which in this case it's a gaming mouse, surprisingly. You can go through two different ways, actually three different ways. Display settings, personalize, and even potentially the settings application that this has. So I'm going to choose personalize, which might be a pretty good idea to show here. You can actually go through those two versions. You can see here, you can actually show like the about thing. Now, if you go through about, I'll show you the specs of my computer, which particularly if you go through about, you might see something like this. It takes a little bit of time to get this to get this working and whatnot. So yeah, it takes a little bit of time. I think that's probably a little true in this in these systems. And I think the only issue with this can be slow timing, and I think that that's true with both Windows 10 and Windows 11 systems. Potentially, if you actually are wondering why this does that, well, there's your answer. I can see that you can go through about in several ways. You can see that, but you can go through like about here, and it will tell you like specs, and it'll tell you a little bit about the system and whatnot. It does take a little bit of time to get this to work again. It takes a little bit of time, but I can see where they finally went for it. So it's not like a system that you want to deal with, and it kind of does. Okay, so here is the processor: AMD Athlon 3000G with Radeon Vega graphics, 3.5 gigahertz, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 64-bit operating system, which is based on the x64 based CPU. And there is no pen or touch input available for the display. So it says lines, okay, so down here, it has Windows 11 Home Edition, version 24H2, installed on June 6th, or I'm sorry, June 5th of 2025, and the OS build or the operating system build number is 26,100.4770, and the experience thing here is Windows Feature Pack, or I'm sorry, Windows Feature Experience Pack version 1000.26100.197.0. Now the manufacturer is actually the Skytech Gaming. I think that that's abbreviated here, but I'm not 100% sure. But if you actually include the 512 gigabytes, this actually is 512 gigabytes, and the graphics card is actually 16 gigabytes, just like the RAM stick. Now, potentially, it is the AMD Radeon RX 580 2048SP. Now, it only does 2400 bits per second, which isn't unusual. So, particularly, it has the same CPU thing over here, which should be interesting. Now, you can also go through another way. Another way of doing this is actually a device manager. And device manager is really unusual for it. And actually, device manager is part of the control panel, which isn't really unusual to see. You can actually go through device manager and it'll show you all the stuff like there is no DVD drive unlike what I've seen on some gaming computers and whatnot. I've seen that on gaming computers like the Acer Aspire Predator computers where they use a DVD drive in that respect. So it's not like that you can in theory use it in that respect. It's not like those. It takes a little bit of time, but I think that that's only because of its because it only takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of time to actually open the programs and all that. So it's not like that you can use device manager and then expect it to be used. Now the hard drive is kind of unusual because it is a solid state drive. just like what I've seen on high-end gaming computers. Essentially, you could at one point get like an SSD that is NVMe. I don't know why they did that. So sometimes it changes the color on my computer, which isn't unusual, but it really does take a little bit of time to get like the device manager and all that crap. So it's not like a computer that was made for device manager access and all that. So it's almost like that they never tell you like exactly how to access that stuff. It's kind of funny. I say this all the time, but I think that that would be kind of nice. But then and it just started to do shit. It would be nice to actually have the device manager and all that. It would be nice. The problem is that it doesn't actually do anything. It won't let me. Okay, here we go. So on here is supposed to be like drivers and all that. So you can in theory go for a device manager, and it would be kind of nice. And it just stopped responding. Isn't that pretty? It kind of doesn't respond sometimes, which isn't really fair to say. Sometimes it doesn't respond, which is not that it is not surprising. My other computers downstairs don't respond all the time, which shouldn't be that interesting. Sometimes it doesn't respond. It's kind of interesting, but I could say, for instance, like trying to figure out ways to deal with stuff isn't really interesting. Which isn't really interesting, but I think comparing this, yeah, sometimes it doesn't respond, which shouldn't be interesting, but comparing this stuff, sometimes it doesn't respond. It's really ridiculous having it going for it. I tried several ways. It doesn't do anything. Sometimes this doesn't respond. It's really not fair to say. And this one here is not responding either. Sometimes this doesn't respond. It's really not fair to have this going about. And there's like two windows that don't do anything. And this one here is not responding. Sometimes this computer doesn't respond, which is kind of sad. I think that's one of the reasons for it. Sometimes that device manager thing doesn't do much. Even both of these are not responding. It's just not fair. And I tried closing this like 1,000 times, like it won't do that. Sometimes the device manager doesn't do much, which isn't fair to say. Which is kind of sad. I don't know what the deal is behind it. I tried closing this like a bunch of times, like it won't let me do anything. It's just kind of sad. I mean, I believe that true. It showed a friggin' window. It's not. And this one here is not letting me close the program. It's just kind of sad. I mean, I believe that. It's very sad to see this. I mean, who knows? Very, very sad to see this. I mean, maybe that is true on this. It won't let me close the program, won't it? That is just sad. I can't believe how many people talk about this shit. Very, very lackluster. I think that that's only true in this stuff. I suppose that this is not a program to be accessed very often. This is absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe how many people talk about this crap. There we go. Okay, so there are a couple of input stuff. You can either go for it. Okay, so for input and output is the microphone, which is a Nexigo N60 FHD webcam audio. Samsung S39C, which is the AMD HD audio device, and speakers are just Realtek stuff. And Bluetooth is actually all the stuff that you will see. Camera gear is the same thing, so it's not really known. A computer is just a stupidity. The disk drive is just a 512 gigabyte. It doesn't tell me exactly. Now the AMD Radeon RX 580 2048 SP. That's actually the display adapter thing. Firmware is just system firmware. There's a lot of like HID devices, which is really interesting. And a standard SATA, and also it's an HCI controller thing. Imaging devices is just a Epson WF2060 printer. Interesting though, there is an HID keyboard device, which isn't really interesting. The mouse is no contest, but I think that that's just an HID mouse. Monitor is actually just a generic monitor. It doesn't tell me what brand though. Network adapter is just this, but it's a lot of protocols and all that crap. Other devices is just AAP client MAP, uh, MAS iOS, wireless IAP, wireless AIP, or I'm sorry, IAP version 2, and then just stupidity. No, it just says a communications port. That's not interesting, but print queries is just that stupid workforce printer. And the printers are just Microsoft IPP class driver. That's not interesting at all. Processor is the same thing as used on the settings stuff. AMD PSP 1 or 10.0 device. Trusted Platform Module 2.0, which isn't interesting at all. Software components is just AMD OpenCL user mode driver and AMD Windows support components, which isn't interesting. Software device is just this and other shit. And sound driver is just all that crap. Storage controller is just Microsoft Storage Spaces controller. That's not interesting, but system devices, wow, that's a lot of that. And Universal Serial Bus Controller, which is just AMD stuff and generic USB hub and all that. And then WSD print provider is from Epson. So I hope you like this video. Please share, like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do. Bye bye.